Thank you, Senator Franken. I have just about one question, I think, for each of you. Let me begin with a question directed to our FERC nominees. This relates to the Alaska Gas Line project, and I'm not going to ask you to prejudge any pending application out there, but I'm sure you are aware back in 2015, the Department of Energy granted a conditional authorization for the Alaska Gas Line to export LNG to countries that don't have a free trade agreement with the United States. This was a pretty big milestone in our efforts to advance a gas line. And then in April of this year, the Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation filed their application with the FERC. It may be the largest application ever. I'm told it's about 58,000 pages. I bet you just can't wait to jump into this. I know that all applications, but particularly applications of this size, take a significant amount of work by staff and by the commissioners. And I've had an opportunity to, prior to the submission of the application, to speak with those that were at FERC at the time about just the ability of the commissioners and the staff to wade through an application of this size in a way that gives it the thorough consideration that I think it deserves, but to do so in a timely and a predictable way. And I would just ask the two of you, assuming that you are going to be confirmed, which I believe you will, and I look forward to that, but that you would give the same considered effort, even though it may be just physically daunting to even look at.
Well, thank you, Senator. Let me say that I believe that FERC's role in approving energy infrastructure projects, including specifically natural gas facilities along the lines that you have referenced, is one of its most important roles. And I'm not surprised by the 58,000-page figure you cite. These are inherently complex matters. There are not only highly technical facilities involved, but they raise complex environmental and community issues, all of which need to be considered carefully. And if confirmed, you have my commitment. I will give the matter the full attention it deserves.
I appreciate that.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think it's important not only for the applicant, but for all stakeholders involved in the process that FERC act in a timely and predictable manner. And 58,000 pages certainly sounds like a daunting matter, but I think the Commission has a lot of staff, a lot of responsibility, a lot of history with regard to these efforts, and I think certainly there are ways to expedite this matter.
Agree, and thank you for that. And just as a follow-on, more as a principle, as a policy matter, again, without asking you to prejudge anything here, do you support Alaska's efforts to advance its stranded gas?
Madam Chairman, I'm concerned that commenting on it might cross the line into suggesting a position on the Alaska Gas Line project. So I'd prefer to refrain from doing that, but certainly as to any state, I support the efforts of each and every state to advance its energy cause.
Yeah, I don't want to put you in a situation where you don't feel comfortable in answering that. Mr. Glick, I will assume that you're going to tell me a similar response here.
Yes, I would I would, but just to add a note, that's obviously the Department of Energy has already acted. The Department of Energy determines whether natural gas should be exported. FERC's authority is very limited in terms of just assessing the facilities, whether they qualify for a certificate of public convenience and necessity.
Fair enough, fair enough. Mr. Baylash, we recognize that in Alaska, everybody thinks about our oil and our gas assets. We know that they are considerable, but we always remind folks that we have more than just oil and gas. Our coal is considerable. Our mineral wealth is considerable, but we also have extraordinary opportunities when it comes to renewables. And you, in your position as Commissioner of Natural Resources for the state of Alaska, had an opportunity to work to advance some of our other considerable resources. I want to give you just a quick moment here to speak to your involvement with advancing renewable resources within the state at the same time that we were working to advance our oil and gas and coal and mineral resources.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Even before my appointment at the Department of Natural Resources, when I was working in the Office of the Governor, I was part of the team that helped deliver a goal for the state of Alaska to achieve 50% of its electric generation by renewable sources. And at the same time, we were working with our legislature to establish a renewable energy fund to help bring capital to the table for communities and regions that were seeking to provide renewable sources of power generation as an alternative to the diesel that is used in most parts of our state. At the Department of Natural Resources, I had the opportunity to work on a variety of renewable energy projects, including in support of the exploration at Mount Spur for geothermal resources. We conducted a lease sale for Mount Augustine to also lease out the geothermal rights for that particular volcano. And in what I consider to be my own backyard for Golden Valley Electric Association, there was the Eva Creek Wind Project, where it was state property that had the best potential in proximity to Interties to put up and erect wind turbines that we first had to wrangle through what the proper valuation methodology was to ensure that the public received a fair share, so to speak, of the value of its real estate that happened to be in a nice, consistently windy place near Healy. So I think if you take a clear-eyed look at our track record as a state, we have a very balanced approach and one that I've been proud to be a part of.
Good, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your leadership, certainly at the time. I do want to include as part of the committee record today some letters of support that we have received on your behalf, Mr. Bailash, so we will include that as part of the committee record today. I do think that we should note for the record that as we have our two FERC nominees and the one who has been named to head up the FERC, and we're talking about reliability, that we seem to be going in and out of the lights here today. I don't understand why. We've checked and nobody is leaning against the light switch. So I don't know whether you should take this as an omen, good or bad. That's up for you to determine, but reliability, it's all key. I'm going to ask the last question here to you, Mr. Nelson. And when we spoke in my office, and I thank you for the conversation, I mentioned ANILCA, the Alaska National Interest Land Conservation Act. In Alaska, that's kind of our, it's the manual of operations almost. There are contained within ANILCA several provisions that we collectively refer to as the no more clauses. And there are sections specific to withdrawal of lands, public lands in Alaska. New withdrawals cannot be in excess of 5,000 acres in aggregate. If it exceeds that, if a withdrawal exceeds that, it can't be effective unless and until Congress acts affirmatively. And it goes further than that. It disallows certain studies of federal lands in the state for establishing conservation system units, national recreation areas, national conservation areas, or other areas that are prohibited, they're prohibited unless authorized by Congress. So again, I'm not asking you to whip out your ANILCA here and tell me word for word how you interpret the new no more clause, but I would ask you generally if you can share with me how you view the meaning of these various clauses within ANILCA and what it means for Alaska when it comes to purposes of withdrawal.
Thank you, Senator. I am familiar with ANILCA, and obviously this is a complicated question. I fully understand how unique Alaska is and the protections that were granted to Alaska and the negotiation that was done in adopting that statute. As to the no more clauses, I think the language is pretty clear that if it's a withdrawal, that it's not permitted, and then you get into a legal discussion of what a withdrawal is. And I'm, not being at the department at this point, it's hard for me to go much further than that, except to say, we certainly are. I'm certainly aware of the commitments that were made to Alaska, and have every intention of keeping that and reviewing the statute and giving it full consideration.
Good. I appreciate that. We look at it pretty literally. No more means no more. And we wish that we could get a more clear interpretation more often out of our agencies. And as you review, again, I mentioned to you that I think it's important that those in our agencies who are implementing provisions under ANILCA know and understand and really appreciate. So, there are ANILCA backgrounders, trainings that certainly those in Alaska have undergone, but I think even more significant than those in Alaska, those here in Washington, D.C. that are making decisions that have impact on us back home have that understanding, that knowledge, that awareness, and would certainly encourage that within the solicitor's office.
Senator, you have my commitment that I will make sure that all 300 attorneys have read ANILCA within a month of me being confirmed, if that happens.
I'm pretty sure most of them have, but it's a little refresher is not a bad thing. And again, we can certainly provide some level of expertise, but thank you for that. Gentlemen, I thank you for the time that you've given the committee this morning. Appreciate all that you are offering of yourself, your professionalism, your expertise, your time to the families that are sitting behind who are the support for these leaders. Thank you, because it means that there's going to be less time at home doing some of the family things that one would like. This is an important service to our country, and we certainly appreciate that. As I mentioned at the outset, it is my hope that we will be able to advance your names out of committee here shortly. I do think it's important that whether it's the FERC and restoring FERC to a full quorum, or providing the secretaries, in this case the Secretary of Interior, his team, to be working on these issues that we all recognize are very important. We can't get you there fast enough. So know that it's my intention to urge my colleagues, get their questions in, ask you to be rapid with your responses, and so we can get the names moved through so that you can get to work. With that, I thank you, and thank those who have joined us today, and the committee stands adjourned.
Thank you, Madam